Welcome, everybody, to the election eve version of Del Beccaro and Hook. I'm Tom Del Beccaro, and that's Steve Hook, and we're glad you're joining us today, whether it's on YouTube or Rumble, but you can find us there. If you like our show, please send it along, and if you don't like our show, please send it along to some friends of yours so we can grow our audience. We'll have some exciting news that I've been promising in the weeks ahead, but let's just dive right into this because we're 2 days away from a pretty darn big election. Each time they say this is the most important election of our lives, and the reason that actually is true is mathematical. And what I mean by that is government power is growing every day. And its ability to exercise that power is accelerating with the changes and progression of technology. And so if government has more power, then the election becomes more important. And that's what we're facing 2 days from now. We've gone through, I don't know, a month in the last week. You had Biden calling us garbage. You had other surrogates, Steve, talking about how Trump has no intelligent women around him ever. That would be Mark Cuban. And then you had the media lose its mind. Speaking of media, we have Bianca Della Garza and her book Incoming. She's going to talk to you about the media. She, of course, is an anchor at Newsmax. But the media went wild with Trump's statement, of course, that Liz Cheney should do what? Should simply be on the front lines and see what it's like before she advocates sending people to war. By the way, that's the oldest line in politics when it comes to war, right? There are armchair people who send people to war and you don't know what it's like and da 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 da. But of course they went crazy, Steve, because things were all against them that last couple of hours, week or days. And so they had to find something to hold on to.
Yeah. It's got to be. Not only is it one of the most historic elections in our lifetime, Tom, I think that's a safe bet. I mean, that's not hyperbolic to say that. There's a lot on the line here, but it's also probably the worst close in history for a presidential campaign. I'm talking about Kamala Harris's close. You want to close on an upbeat, positive note. Well, there's not much she can point to. She certainly can't point to the past 4 years as anything uplifting. She can't point to the southern border. The jobs report yesterday was horrendous, and not just horrendous. 12,000 jobs added. That's like a new low. And the funny thing about that, Tom, is that they always put these jobs numbers out, and then like a month and a half, 2 months later, they come in with the revision, and it's always way worse. You'll remember last March, we lost 818,000 jobs. Poof, just vanished. So when they're telling us they added 12,000 jobs, I'm wondering if we didn't lose about 50 grand. But the numbers that they did put out didn't point a very rosy picture. Most of those jobs were government jobs, which means we'll be paying for those jobs. So that was horrible. She can't point to the economy. The inflation is still, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Biden comes out and makes the garbage comment. Cuban says the idiotic thing about the women that surround Trump. And then, as you touched on, and I think it's very, very important, the media looking desperate for anything they can find to prop up the Kamala Harris campaign, latches onto something that Trump said. They remove any and all context from it. I mean, even leftists are coming out saying, okay, this is crap. Cenk Uygur, one of the guys from, I don't know if I said his name right. I don't really much care, but he's a guy on the Young Turks, Tom. Even he came out and said, that's not what Trump said. So it's going from bad to worse for them, I think, and hopefully, knock on wood, it doesn't get much better in the next couple days.
Yeah, don't forget Bill Maher talking about the magnitude of the garbage comment. Now, the reason why it is a significant comment is because it fits in with what they've been saying. It was not out of context, but it's not just what Kamala's been saying or Biden. It is their history, their last four nominees. remember, Obama said that they cling to their Bibles and their guns, right? That's utter disdain that's an elite with an utter disdain, although how Obama ever became an elite is troubling in itself. That's just disdain for the everyday voter. Then you had Hillary with her deplorables comment. Again, disdain. You had Biden, who is on and off said Nazi, and of course, Kamala talking about how Trump is a Nazi and therefore you're supporting a Nazi. And then the garbage comment comes out. So that's their last four nominees.
Yeah.
So there's your picture. That's their view of the American public. And so that's why this election has become rather clear. Now, look, this is a great deal of division in America. You get where they're coming from because that's really who they are now. They are elites, and they think that you're not smart enough to make your own choices, which, of course, is very opposite of what our founders wanted. What I wanted to do in the time we have left in this segment, though, is talk about why this election to me matters, or what a voter should be considering. And so there are a bunch of issues, but there are the plain economics of it all. Remember, Kamala Harris has never held a position in the legislature or the Congress where she has had to create consensus. So she has no experience in consensus leadership. The Trump tax bill is set to expire next year. When it expires, that would be the biggest tax increase in American history and would plunge us into a recession. So we are already, as you pointed out, with the 12,000 and what we lost 40,000 manufacturing jobs. We're already in a private sector recession. This is being floated by big deficits. So on the economy, if we vote Harris, the country, then we're headed for recession because she has already said she is not going to extend the Trump tax cuts. That's a disaster. Foreign policy. She has no experience managing foreign policy. What does this mean? Well, that means she's going to rely on the same people that Obama used and the same people that Biden used who are trying to work deals with Iran, which means Iran's going to get a bunch of money and the wars are going to get even more dangerous. And the threat of World War III is sizable. Remember, Russia was supplying the Houthis and others. So the economy, foreign policy, and then to me, the great morality issue of this campaign, other than the life issue, is, of course, the southern border. It is not just, as I said in 2015 and 16 when I was running against her for U.S. Senate, that in a nuclear terrorist age, you can't have an open border. It is the fact that now we know 50,000 children are missing. At what level is it acceptable to you, the voter, that 300,000 plus children are missing, many of whom have been sold into slavery, including sexual slavery? What else do you need to know about what is wrong with the human being that she doesn't address it, she doesn't take ownership of it, has no plan to deal with it? So which of those 320,000 plus children would you say didn't deserve to live a life? And if you're voting for this Kamala Harris, she has said, I can't think of anything I would change. Okay, great. For me, that issue alone, as serious as the other two are, that issue alone, the moral depravity of sitting by and watching that, Steve, tells me that woman should be nowhere near the White House.
It's disqualifying as far as I'm concerned, and you're absolutely right. And this is kind of like one of those addendums that you always have to add. If it were a Republican, what would the media be doing? But it's true. Imagine if it were Trump that lost 350,000 kids. We would never have heard the end of it. We haven't even heard the beginning of it from the media with regards to Biden and Harris losing damn near 500,000 kids. I mean, over 250,000. Jeez Louise. And it really is. It does speak to the morality and lack thereof, and not just of Harris, but the entire party, because nobody has called her out on this from the left that I've seen. Certainly not the groups at, not the panel shows at CNN or MSNBC. They just keep saying Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, all rolled into one. That's Trump. And the 350,000. Oh, come on, that's just an accounting error, I guess. It's beyond bizarre, and I think that. Tell me if you think this, Tom, but I think the American people are really. If you take a look at some of these battleground, I know we're going to do our predictions later, but some of these battleground states, and really what's impressive to me is the early voting that the GOP is turning out in some of these states. Georgia, for example, setting records. North Carolina's doing pretty darn well. Same goes in Arizona. Pennsylvania could come into play. Who would have thunk it? I don't know. That might be wishful thinking, but I think people are kind of saying, you know what, this is, she lied, Tom. She lied about working at McDonald's in order to secure the job of president of the United States. Imagine thinking that it's a good idea to lie about working a takeout window so you can secure the most important job on the planet. It's bizarre.
Yeah, if you looked at, we're going into polling, but you're right. In our last segment, we're going to make our predictions and why. But the Democrats are panicking. You have a place like Arizona where Republicans are up 180,000 ballots over the Democrats. Well, that's an unbelievable number.
Yeah.
And people rightfully ask, well, does that mean that the Democrats are going to catch up on election day? By getting the early ballots in, it allows the Republicans to contact the infrequent voters and talk to them about getting them out as well. You look at this election and the media, the PR firm, and we're going to talk to my great friend Bianca Della Garza about her book Incoming, and her experience with dealing with the media, and when she realized it was no longer about journalism and it was more about their political bent. But yeah, they're nowhere on the border issues or fentanyl. We're losing 80,000 people a year. That if we lost 80,000 people a year in a war, and by the way, this is China's war against the United States. They're sending the fentanyl components to Mexico, where the cartels put it together and then ship it into here. If we lost 80,000 people a year in a war, whoever president was would be gone.
Yeah. Put it this way. To that point, Tom, we lost between 55,000 and 57,000 in Vietnam over all those years. We're losing 80,000 a year. Some years a little more, some years a little less, but rounding it out to about 80 grand a year since Biden took office. And again, much like the 350,000 kids that have vanished into the ether, the media is deathly silent on this subject. It's striking.
Yeah, and so then the other thing that I think we touched upon this before, but I think it bears repeating. She is not a decisive person. Of course, I campaigned against her in 2015 and 16. I debated her twice. She's just not decisive. It's one thing when you have to be thoughtful as a leader. You have to listen to advisors. You should bring smarter people in the room around you if you want to be a good leader, whether that's a good leader of are you ready, a McDonald's, or certainly the president of the United States. But once the decision-making process, you have to be decisive in that process. And then for sure you have to be decisive once you make your decision and in making that decision. She is not.
Yeah.
And you can see that real quick. You can see that when she is on TV talking, because she just meanders all over the place. If you think just because she meanders when she talks that it ends there, no, she meanders in her mind all the time, and that doesn't make for a leader.
Yeah, and you're right. And the word salads and stuff have become a punchline. She seems to think that the more she talks, whether even if it's just saying a whole bunch of nothing, that it makes her sound smart. But you know who is decisive around Kamala Harris is her staff. She's lost like 92, 93% of her staff that ever worked for her have bagged out. They're gone. So there's some decisiveness going on, not from her, but anybody that worked for or under her. So I guess smart people are just like, yeah, I don't want to be around her.
Yeah, and
Maybe Cuban could be her assistant.
on the other hand, it's pretty simple what needs to be done on the border, and Trump's going to do that.
Yeah.
It's very simple what needs to be done with Iran. You got to defund them, and Trump is going to do that. It is very clear to me that we need to deregulate, allow more energy production, break the back of high energy prices, and keep the current tax code in shape. You can upgrade it, but you certainly shouldn't do a tax increase. So for three very simple reasons, it's easy to vote for Trump. Now, if you're listening to us and you don't like Trump personally, okay, you don't have to love everything, but you have two choices here: tax increase, more money to Iran and an open border, or even more tax reform and reductions, close the border, and stop funding Iran. And those are pretty big, the big three, if you want to put it that way, Steve.
Yeah.
It's very simple. And of course, we won't have Kamala Harris's or Susan Rice's or whoever's been picking these judges. You won't have them picking judges. You'll have Trump picking judges. And so this, for me, is a pretty simple choice.
Yeah. I just really hope that people that are typically apolitical and kind of say, "Oh, politics, I can't deal with it. I don't even like thinking about it." I think that those people need to turn out. Some people, the undecideds are a big deal, the moderates, the independents, what have you. But it's the apathetic voter that I think really needs to show up. And I also think that that's why this garbage comment was so much bigger than a lot of people think, much like the deplorables comment that you made mention of with Hillary. It ended up rebounding against Democrats in a big, bad way. And with any luck, that's what's going to happen this time, because Kamala Harris tomorrow in old Saturday Night Live, she is not ready for prime time. And this job doesn't wait around for you to get acclimated to it. You got to be able to jump in with both feet and start swinging. And God knows Trump will do that.
Especially when there are two very big wars going on that need a decisive leader, someone with some experience, not someone who's going to kowtow to polling, right? She made her decisions related on Israel not because of what would be good for the country or the world, but would be good for her politically. And the Obama people have blown this. We have this war because of the Obama people. It can only end when they are no longer involved in the process. Okay, we're running out of time on this. We're going to have my friend Bianca Della Garza talk to us about the media, the election, and her new book, Incoming. And then after that, we're gonna make our prognostications. I'll give you an early one. The next time you see Steve, he'll have shorter hair. And the next time you see us, we'll give you who's gonna win the election. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, we're Del Bacar on Hook at YouTube and Rumble. Welcome back, everybody, to Del Beccaro and Hook Enlightened Dissent. This is the portion of the show that is always so much fun. We get to have a special guest on, and today we get to have a great friend of mine, Bianca Della Garza. She is, of course, an Emmy-nominated and award-winning TV host, producer, and journalist. She is with Newsmax right now as a host. And she's got this great new book out. So I love the title, Bianca. Love the title.
Thanks, Tom.
There it is. It's called Incoming, which the moment you start reading it, you realize how she got to that particular title. So, Bianca, welcome to Del Beccaro and Hook.
It is so great to be with you and your listeners and viewers. And I like this side because now I get to sit back and you can ask me questions.
Yes. So, and there's no holds barred. So let's get right to it. Okay. The media is, for especially those on the right, incredibly frustrating at this point in time. I mean, think about what just happened, the way they treated Trump's statement in Arizona. They protected Biden the last time. I say they're the PR agency for Kamala Harris, CNN, MSNBC. So you've been in journalism a long time. I'm not going to say how many years because you apparently started at 5 years old. But tell us a little bit about your career, why, and how it played into this great new book called Incoming.
So I'll tell you, because I'm proud of it. I actually have 25 years in the industry. And when I got into journalism, I was, very young, very optimistic, very determined. And that's why I started my first job out of college in Albany, New York, Market 51, pretty unheard of, right? So I was thrown right into the state capitol with George Pataki, Betsy McCoy, lieutenant governor, and all this sort of wild New York politics. Chuck Schumer was elected. Hillary Clinton was coronated. We'll get into that. But Tom, I really feel that journalism as an industry has decayed over the years to a point now where it's unrecognizable. So I wrote this book because 3 hours a day I'm on the front lines, helming stories for Newsmax, having smart people on like yourself and others to really combat what you really hit off the top of the podcast, and that this is state-run media. And we saw that play out during the truncated campaign season. And I write about how it was like seeing Karine Jean-Pierre tell our James Rosen it was cheap fakes, only to then, of course, do the 180. And now they want everyone to get behind Kamala. But I love this profession. My faith in what I do is because it's not a job, it's a calling. And to be the voice for the voiceless and to root out corruption. And when that breaks down, as you write about in your book too, the American civilization, we really have a problem with how free society exists. And we get closer to communism every single day. So the media is doing a huge harm, not just to American people, but to overall society. And I think there is a global sort of push to have America fail, and the people from within our own country are facilitating it quite rapidly.
So in your book, and I'm not going to give away too much of it, but and definitely go to Amazon and help pump this book up. You talk about the time that you went to the great event in Washington, D.C., the journalism dinner, but you felt sort of out of sorts getting there. So what was that like going into the den of journalism iniquity, if you don't mind me calling it that?
No, you're referring to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which, everyone always wants to be invited, don't they? Because they're part of that Washington elite clique. I had never been invited, Tom. And I knew I was writing the book, and this invitation came across, and Newsmax had a seat at the table, and I was invited, and I said, I'm definitely going to go. This is actually researching great to see them in their element. And I did call it chapter 1 inside the Legacy Media's Lion's Den, because it is sort of this perfectly illustrated problem with what's wrong with the media. They're, cheering Joe Biden. They're not covering Joe Biden, and everyone's sort of looking to do air kisses and selfies with Anthony Fauci. And just how fake it really was, and how none of this is about exposing anything, because they don't want to get kicked out of the club either. And I think that's why we see Kamala Harris And, I worked in California too. I didn't stand on a debate stage like you did, but I've covered California politics, and I spent several years in San Diego. I went to University of Redlands for a brief time. And then later I lived in Los Angeles for about 5 years while I was doing documentaries around the world. But these people that are covering the Washington elite so clearly are part of them. They don't have the struggles. They don't understand the American workers. They've been insulated in their, we say ivory towers, but it could be their ivory studios. So for them, the idea of asking a tough question to Mayorkas, who I busted right up to and said, "Hey, will you come on my show?" And he's like, "Yeah, definitely." Never heard from him. Is unheard of. They're too close. They're too in it. And then in the flip side, they like to villainize people who are actually in the fight, because I think deep down inside, I mean, I sleep very well at night. I know what I'm doing, and I'm on the right side of history. I think deep down inside, they understand they have to show just sound bites or clips of what they do, because any long expanded format like this, where they were to have a thoughtful conversation with you, it's impossible, because all they are is talking points and the logic that does not compute for their brains. So they have to operate on sort of this surface, and they have to operate within the swamp mechanisms, or they're out.
Okay, yeah, let me stop you there, because you said it in a very interesting way, which we never hear on TV. At least I haven't. And, I do 500-600 radio show and TV shows a year. You said they don't want to get kicked out of the club. So talk about that dynamic. I mean, is it really so much so that they're afraid if they stand up, they'll be ostracized? Isn't that a
Yeah, where would they go? Jen Psaki was the White House press secretary. Now she has a show on MSNBC. They're operatives, right? These are operatives. They're not journalists. And they're placed in positions to regurgitate facts that work for the White House, vis-a-vis work for all of, I believe, sort of an agenda that's being pushed to, sow division in our country, chaos, whether it be racial, whether it be family, whether it be economic, chaos. So yeah, I think they are afraid, because there's no safe place for them to go. You can't literally say trust the science and then come back, to a platform where everything we've been doing has sort of opened up how it was from a Wuhan lab. So once you sell your soul, there's really no coming back. So they have to operate in this sort of system. And it was a system that they knew Joe Biden had issues, right? And they would even go to bat for that. Think about the danger of that. They were okay to lie, knowing that the president, they have sources, right? Because it started to kind of seep out that he was falling asleep during cabinet meetings. He was calling for dead people in the middle of news conferences, people that have been dead for years. That is sort of beyond the pale, that they would do that, knowing that this guy had the nuclear codes, knowing that he was going to be up for election for another 4 years. I mean, think of the pure insanity. These people have kids. These people have families. Why aren't they worried about the future like you and I? Why aren't they worried about the sex trafficking coming across the border? Why is it all about abortion, January 6th insurrection? Because their moral framework, their fiber is so eroded by what's been going on. Now, I do think a lot of this is corporate media. I do think there's overlords that they have been also told to do this, but they choose to do it. Let's not, they choose every day. Kamala Harris was on a tarmac yesterday. They chose to ask her about the comments that were being taken out of context by Donald Trump, calling Liz Cheney basically a war hawk. And not once did they bring up how Mark Cuban had said Donald Trump doesn't put himself around intelligent, smart women. They choose not to cover things, and they choose to cover other things. And that is where we have the complete obfuscation and really the complete deception of American people. That's the only way I can see it is a complete deception. It's a fraud. It's why 60 Minutes re-edited her questions. And we go on and on and on. You know this. We know this. But I wonder how much longer they will last.
Folks, we're talking with Bianca De La Garza, the author of the great new book, Incoming, so appropriately titled. Please go to Amazon and help her out with that. You're going to love this, because it's not, it is incoming, but it's in a conversational way that tells a story, which I endeavor to do from time to time, but I love it. So, all right, so here we are. We're in this moment. I wrote a piece years ago, I think in the Washington Times, Where through most of history, and certainly American history, the media has been divided. I mean, the Sam Adams and James Otis were not unbiased, right? The Federalists and the sympathizers of the Crown wrote from different perspectives. Run up to the Civil War, we had this intense division in the South. The Democrats in favor of the war and slavery were called fire eaters. So it's sort of the normal state of human affairs because we tend to be biased. But in America, I thought it was an interesting point when years ago you had CNN was the biggest and Fox came along. And I thought to myself, well, this will be interesting. Will CNN attempt to to appeal to a greater audience, because Fox was coming in appealing to who CNN wasn't,
Yeah.
or will CNN get more targeted and stay on the left? And now we have entire shows. MSNBC, you saw how the young Mr. Vanderbilt, Anderson Cooper, elite as you can get, say this isn't MSNBC. Is there any way out of this tunnel where MSNBC and the like are so far on the left? Do we have to wait for Elon Musk to buy CBS? What lies ahead?
He's going to be too busy, I think, working in possibly in administration, which really, really scares them. That was a flashpoint when he bought X. I think what the beauty of what's happened in just the past few years, and I agree, there's always been sort of the bias in the media. And I think, when they came along and you saw Fox emerge and you saw sort of something that was, there's always going to be this division. But then what I think kind of made it a little bit more America like waking up is the control aspect, right? And COVID changed a lot. Lockdowns, school closures, church closures. There was a lot of hypocrisy involved, and there was a lot of silencing. And I think anytime you suppress people's actual freedom, like they probably understand this is left media, this is right media, right? But when it starts getting into more controls, and then I think a government becomes weaponized against the people. And then the media is actually in part of that and working in concert with it. That's when you say no more. I think that the other beautiful thing that has sort of emerged with all of this is when I went to school for journalism, I was obviously, I'm old school. I knock on doors. And then we had sort of this apathetic younger generation that wants to just be victims that, DEI, CRT, all of this. Like, I want everything handed to me. I actually don't want to do anything. I want to just have a protest if you're going to like not give me what I need, what I want, raised by helicopter parents. So this sort of explosion and Marxist professors, it was the perfect sort of, if you will, recipe for these people who have been playing the long game in the university system, which I write about as well. But then I do believe where we stand today is alternative media, and they're not even alternative, but there's a workaround. Trump can go on Joe Rogan. He can go on, JD Vance can go on. He can sit with Theo Vaughn. He can sit with other people who aren't traditional journalists, but they are authentic people and voices that speak for Americans. And, Kamala Harris won't go on Joe Rogan. So there's a workaround. You've almost short-circuited all these big networks because everyone knows that they're lying. So where do you go? And I just think it's part of sort of who we are and why this foundation of this country will survive and why we're so strong. There's a thirst for knowledge. There's a thirst to build, to grow, and any type of tyranny or oppression will actually instinctively in our DNA, like epigenics, right? We're gonna revolt in a way where it's like we're gonna be directed to people who are going to be sort of a different platform for us. So I think also that the legacy media know that. They know Newsmax beats them. They know that CNN knows that very well, and so they're clinging even tighter.
Yeah, which is an interesting reaction. They could attempt to be investigative journalists in the old days, right? And discover something about something and win a true Pulitzer Prize because they did something that benefited society. But I don't see that desire in them.
I think because I call them corporate overlords, they're not going to be allowed to by the people at the top. But also, I don't think the audience that's watching them would actually handle it. And so it would take a lot of courage for one to do it, because then let's say one of the legacy media really started hammering Donald Trump, right? First of all, everyone who's been watching them who believes they just told them he's a Nazi and a fascist and a threat to democracy. So they're comfortable like in that conversation, in that narrative. So then they'd go to another network. So it really is about ratings, because ultimately we do know this. It's a business. Ratings make money. And that's why there's also economic hit jobs that go against conservative media. That's another thing, I think, Tom, a thread to this that people didn't realize how deep it was before. Places like NewsGuard, started by Democratic operatives, they'll go and judge news stations, news networks, and it's the left ones that get the trustworthy, and then other ones don't. And Elon Musk, they try to, threaten advertisers not to advertise on X. So they try to actually, not by deplatforming you, but they try to do it economically behind the scenes. These are savages. These are really, really bad people who know that the more people wake up, the more the message, I don't even think it's left or right, just the message of morality, conservative, the more it gets out, the more their demise is inching forward at a rapid pace.
Okay, in the couple of moments that we have left, tell us what are we're on election eve here.
Yeah.
Just 2 days to the election. What are you seeing? And you, by the way, you've been out there. You're not just in a studio. You've gone to some of these events. What's
Both
the
conventions
sense
this
you
year.
have?
Yeah, I was at both conventions this year. I'm also here in South Florida, so I'm close to Mar-a-Lago as well. I speak to a lot of folks that are sort of in the, really over the target of this. And I think what I'm seeing is there will never be a candidate like Donald Trump. And before, people who maybe didn't like him as a man really now respect the policies and have an actual record versus Kamala Biden record. So it is hard, I think, for people who are still clinging to legacy media to come to that. But what I'm really seeing is their true colors being exposed, whether it be the garbage comment, whether it be Cuban's comments, whether it be the McDonald's comments. Did she work at McDonald's? I mean, the friend that said she worked there still has never come forward. I think there's a true contempt they have for Americans, our way of life, what we are doing here. And I think it's on full display. And that's, if there is a light at the end of the tunnel, it is that people who have lost everything in a hurricane, felt abandoned, saw FEMA, spend money on migrants, saw Elon Musk bring Starlink, and Starlink, FEMA tried to stop him from landing his helicopters. So they're seeing weaponization. This is the problem. The radical left, they just pushed it way too far. Maybe there was a little opening with BLM a few years ago in 2020, and now all their social justice leading to crime, all the open borders. That's what I really think. I think the past, between 2020 and now, we've seen so much of their policies hurt people that they are willing now to maybe vote for a man they didn't want to vote for before. So that's really what we're talking about, people who have come across. And her message is really lacking in substance. I mean, I will say this, you don't have to necessarily agree with me. I think she's a complete idiot. She's not a good candidate. She's fallen her way up throughout her career. She's never actually had to do much on her own. She's always had help to sort of be placed because of identity politics. So, she's not very qualified. And now the world's on fire. And she's still proving every single day that she's still the same person. So it's a personality issue, and that you can't really dress up at the end of the day when there's so many crises here and abroad. It's just
Yeah,
almost, that's where I think we're at, is where it's just too ugly. And she's not the one.
yeah. What I don't hear enough said about her is she is not a decisive person. It's one thing if you don't know a subject, you bring in experts, but a true leader, to be successful, has to be decisive after the decision just as much as in making the decision. And she does not have that in her DNA. Biden didn't really either. I'm not sure Obama did. And that's why she would never, among many reasons why she wouldn't be a good president. So we're running out of time here in a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about what do you want people to come away with from your book, Incoming, and where do they get it?
I think what I wanted to do when I wrote this book was capture a moment in time that I was living in and reporting on, from a true sense of how the media operates, how politics is operating. And I think it really encapsulates some hope at the end. I like to believe. I didn't think when it started we'd have a full-on coup, 2 assassination attempts. Donald Trump almost dying in Butler assassination. I think it really does. The book is sort of an insider's POV for someone who has been talking to some of the people and that are really shaping policy and also fighting as well for the American people. But it's not a memoir, but I do share a lot about my faith walk. I share a lot about where I grew up, why I'm sort of drawn to this industry that I love. My mother was a flight attendant. My dad was born in Mexico, came here legally. My family immigrated legally. So all of this sort of has brought me to this moment where I just feel really blessed that I'm able to talk to Americans every day. So if I have a platform, I'm not going to use it or let that time be wasted. So the book is just another way to reach out to the viewers, to Americans, to the world. I'm so grateful. Governor Huckabee endorsed it with a ringing endorsement, a really beautiful sentiment. And I just think it's filled with stories of patriots and people who really think that there can be a turnaround, and a really big one. So when we hit number 1 on Amazon just a few days ago, I was really overwhelmed by this. I love the process. I think after next week, I'm going to start my next one.
That's funny because I thought this book, Over My Shoulder, Lessons of the American Civilization, would be the last, and already have the next one in mind, which we started working on. So where can people follow you? Where should they be watching you day to day? And most importantly, when am I on? And what's up next?
Let's tape a segment right now and we'll put it in. Well, thank you, Tom, first for having me. And I absolutely love having you on. I wrote a lot about the lawfare, and you were one of the voices day in, day out when the show was turned into a legal show. And thank goodness there are people like you and other lawyers who really could decipher what was pretty weedy. So I'm on Twitter at Bianca DL Garza. I'm on Truth Social and Instagram, Bianca Della Garza Official. And the book is on Amazon right now. It'll be on other outlets. It's on Barnes & Nobles as well. And I have my website, biancadelagarza.com. I'm starting a newsletter. I've just been a little busy. But people can sign up for that to figure out where I'm going to be, what I'm working on next. And always Newsmax, of course, every day, 12 Eastern for 2 hours, and then 4 o'clock Eastern. So I'm just super happy that we can have this conversation. I appreciate your support for this endeavor of mine, because I think you are a fantastic writer, and I love your books.
Thank you so much. Folks, we've been talking with my friend Bianca here, who, of course, Mark Cuban has never met and would never want around him.
I actually met him once.
No, what was that like? You can't end on that.
It was very brief. I was covering the Super Bowl down in Jacksonville, Florida, and he was at the Katy Perry concert, and he was just very rude. And I was actually a pretty well-known journalist in the time in New England, and he couldn't have time for us little people. And I got a sense that he was kind of a ass.
Yeah.
And now we have full proof.
And people like that who speak in absolutes. I mean, how does he not know that Kellyanne Conway was the first ever woman to have an award to win a national campaign and run it? Is he unaware of that? Does he not know Melania knows more languages than he even knows exists? How does he miss these things?
And
it's the elitism.
Yeah, they just like to hear themselves talk. They're just in their own echo chamber. And he probably thought it sounded so great and no one would call him on it. But he doesn't know what conservative women are like. And I'm proud to be among those women.
All you need to know about Mark Cuban is that The View defended him. That is all you need to know. But what you need to know about Bianca Della Garza is 12 p.m. or noon Eastern. And her new book, Incoming, we've been talking about. There it is. Please go to Amazon and buy her book, and then buy my book right after that. Thanks so much, Bianca, for joining us today on Del Beccaro and Hook on YouTube and Rumble. And we'll be right back to talk about, Steve and I will give our predictions on who's going to win the election, because I already know what Bianca thinks. Do I?
It's a good tease for the next podcast, post-election.
There you go. Take care. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tom.
right, welcome back to Del Bacaro and Hook Enlightened Dissent. And I am Steve Hook. It's good to be with you, Tom. Well, it's that time, buddy. We've got to make some predictions here. I would just posit this, that the one state, and I think this is very telling, the one state, that the blue state that looks to be definitely in Kamala's camp, and this comes as no shock, Virginia. What does Virginia have that most states don't? Well, a whole bunch of federal government employees. And as we mentioned, those 12,000 jobs, most of those were just a horrible jobs report. Most of those were government jobs. So it doesn't come as a shock that Virginia is double digits ahead for Kamala Harris. That said, Tom, the rest of these battleground states, who would have thought that Pennsylvania would be in play, or Wisconsin, or perhaps even Michigan? And then you've got Nevada, Arizona. Georgia's looking like a drubbing for Kamala Harris. Same is probably true. North Carolina, kind of 50-50 right now. It's a coin flip. But I would just say that given what we saw in 2020 and given what we saw in 2016, Trump has already closed the gap considerably in those two previous elections. So if the turnout, election day turnout, mirrors the early voting turnout, the GOP has really ramped it up. I think they've done a great job this election cycle. Of course, we may be singing a different tune on Wednesday morning, but I don't know, man. I'm feeling very, very good about this. And like I said, Virginia is the one. It's certainly not a bellwether. It has got all of the government employees there. So I think Virginia probably goes to her, but I don't know, man. What do you think, Tom?
Well, a number of things. Let's start with your Trump ahead where he was in the prior two elections, right? Because Hillary was up, I think, double digits, and Biden was up 7, and now they're essentially tied. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Harris is weak in general. It has to do with the fact that nobody really knows her. She's never really done anything nationwide, so there isn't a great affinity or familiarity with her. But I also think the hidden Trump vote is smaller than in years past, because I think a lot of hidden Trump voters have come out and are more vibrant than they used to be. But here are the things I'm looking at that to me, I think, say that Trump's going to win this election if it's free and fair. Number one, the wrong track is incredibly high. It's in the mid 70s. And in the television era, a wrong track of that high, the White House party hasn't won. It's a little different now because she is not the president. It is a little different now because she just sort of jumped in there. And it is different now because of the divided era. The Democrats are more intense in their loyalty than the past. But I do think that they're not as energetic as Republicans overall, and that is belied by the fact that the Republicans are out early voting. A place like Arizona up, where Republicans are up 180,000 ballots, which is nothing like that last time around. So as I look at this, there's no way in a free and fair election in my mind that she wins Arizona. It's just not going to happen. That is the border state in America. And what I mean by that is where illegal immigration and a lack of border control is impacting a state the very worst. So Trump's going to win Arizona. Trump's going to win Georgia. The Georgia election laws are much better than they were the last time around. And so I think he wins those two states. I'm going to go with the fact that Kamala pulled her funding for television ads from North Carolina. That means to me that she's going to win North Carolina. Let's go back out west with Nevada. Early voting shows real strength for Trump in Nevada. I also think that his no tax on tips early pledge, which, let's face it, Nevada runs on the hospitality industry. I think that was a big early winner. And the hidden secret is Trump's strength among Latinos. They actually want a legal border. They don't want it just being overrun and the danger that represents. So really, the only way Kamala can win is if she wins Michigan, if she wins Virginia, if she wins Wisconsin, if she wins Pennsylvania, and then she's got to win Nebraska. And I'm going out, by the way. I'll be in Allentown speaking after the election, November 7th at the Lehigh Tea Party. You can go to the Lehigh Tea Party websites and get tickets for that. The book tour goes there. But let me finish this segment of what I'm saying with the fact that Nate Silver says that the pollsters are rigging this, and he has Trump up 55-45. Well,
Wow.
that would be huge, right? So maybe it isn't 55-45. Maybe it's more like 53-47, but that's enough to bring in Pennsylvania to Trump. And I'm going to go with Fetterman and say that Trump does win Pennsylvania and therefore the presidency.
Yeah, I think that first of all, Nate Silver. When I heard Nate say what he was saying, I was like, I don't know if he's, I agree with him that the polls are pumped up a little bit, and it's always hard to tell, especially this day and age. Nobody has a landline anymore. Most people, when they see potential spam pop up on their cell phone, they ignore it. So it's, I almost pity the pollsters. It's not easy to do these days. But when Nate Silver comes out and gives a number that high in favor of Trump, it makes me wonder if what he's really trying to do is scare the hell out of Democrats to get out there and vote. But I got to tell you, Tom, I don't think there's a lot of fence sitters on this. We know that it's a very small little sliver of pie that Trump and Kamala are. It's 2 days out, so the campaign is really over at this point. But for the last couple of weeks, they have been fighting for a very, very small portion of the electorate. That's why comments like garbage people was so devastating. That's why Mark Cuban insulting any woman that would dare vote for Trump was so stupid, because it's such a tiny little sliver of the electorate that they're fighting for here. If the blue wall crumbles, and it looks like it could certainly in Pennsylvania, it's over. It's over. I think if we get, I would wager we're going to get earlier results for Michigan than we will for PA. It's just kind of the nature of Pennsylvania. We'll probably know what PA did sometime before Christmas. But if Michigan falls, that's going to be that'll be the telltale sign right there. Michigan falls, and that's a big lift for Trump. Gretchen Whitmer's very popular. God knows why in Michigan, but she is. And maybe it'll carry the hump for get her over the hump in Michigan. Tom, let me ask you this real quick. We don't have a lot of time, but down ballot. You mentioned Arizona. Trump looks like pretty much a lock, but Carrie Lake, she's a little bit underwater there. How do you think the down ballot's going to go?
Well, it's interesting. There's a recent poll that's had Carrie Lake up in that election with late movement. And if this is the 1980 election all over again and late movement, then Carrie Lake's there. Look, I think Republicans win 51 Senate seats. There are some estimates that it could go as high as 55. So Republicans are going to get the Senate and hold on to it, I think, for a very long time, because there's more reliable red states than blue states. So then the question really becomes the House. And if there's a late movement and these early voting numbers hold up, and what I mean by that is they hold up in such a way that it indicates a greater Republican vote than last time, not just a different time that they voted, then I think they take the House too. I think it's better 50-50 chance that Republicans have all three branches.
Clean sweep. It'd be great to see, wouldn't it? I mean, I'm just imagining all the liberal tears and the screaming at the sky, and oh my God, and
the lawfare that they would immediately start
And that's very important.
to undertake, which is like the joke of what's going on in Arizona, where for publicity, oh, we're going to look into whether he was threatening Liz Cheney, a non-resident. Just hello for you legal people out there. If I'm in New Jersey and or California, then I say I'm going to come get Steve Hook, who's not even in the state. The people. So anyway, at the end of the day, though, look, I think this is a late movement thing. Their desperation. The fact that Jamie Dimon said I'm not going to work for anyone after saying he would have worked for Harris. You know why he's not going to work for anyone? Because he sees internal polling, and his polling has to be really good because he's chairman of the biggest bank in the world, and it means a lot of money to them. So he really sees what's going on.
Yeah.
He doesn't have CBS tipping the scales, like Nate Silver saying that they're tipping the scales to make this look close. So I don't see that.
Tom, let me just add this because as you mentioned, right there, not only do you have Jamie Dimon basically saying, I'm not going to endorse, is essentially what he's saying there, but I'm not going to work for me. So he's kind of pulling out. But look at what just happened last week. You've got the Washington Post. You see Jeff Bezos, he's got the entire editorial board there in an uproar over his decision not to endorse, quickly followed by the LA Times. Then USA Today decides they're not going to endorse. And then 200 Gannett-owned newspapers around the country say they're not going to endorse. So somebody's looking at some internal polling and they're saying, we don't want to get on the wrong side of this. So rather than endorse, we're just going to pull the plug on it and say it doesn't matter anymore. That's got to send a shiver down the spine of the Kamala Harris campaign, because the only person that negatively affects, certainly not Trump, it's Harris.
Yeah, you're right. Look, my political philosophy is enough of big government. It doesn't work. It harms more than it's help. We're way past when we should have been curtailing government. This isn't, for me, it's not about any one candidate at any given time, right? Yes, there's pluses to minuses to candidates, a lot of minuses on Harris. But the reality is I am biased. We cannot go for more government at this stage, and we can't make dumb foreign policy decisions like giving Iran tons of money. So maybe I'm a little biased there, but I'm going to go with some historical markers, like the reality is if 75% of the people say we're on the wrong track, that benefits the outsider in this particular case, Donald Trump, but we'll have to see.
Tom, I'm going to throw a little analogy at you. Would you say it's safe to say that the Kamala Harris campaign has been managing this campaign much like Aaron Boone managed the Yankees in the World Series?
Well, I do want Harris gone, and I do want Aaron Boone gone. So I'm going. So Alex, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
But and then he'd say in the form of a question.
Yeah.
Could things get worse? Yes. Yes. You could drop a fly ball to center. By the way, real quick, I just want to echo the fact that obviously we want Bianca to sell a lot of books, but Tom's book is great. The Lessons of the American Civilization. Go snap that book up. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Get it wherever you get it. Go to tomdell.com. Get it there as well, because that's a hell of a book. But yeah, Tom, I don't know, man. Fingers crossed. I'm thinking good things on Tuesday. Shocking the world is what I hope. And Trump has been a known commodity since the mid-'80s, folks. The fact that they're trying to play him up like this madman is, I think that's very telling. No doubt. All right. We'll see everyone next week. Join us on Del Beccaro and Hook, YouTube, and Rumble. We'll see what the Rumble is Tuesday. We'll see you next weekend. Thanks so very much.
Goodbye.